After quite the delay, Trevor Bauer has officially chosen his next team, and he is headed to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Welcome to an emergency edition of Fantasy Baseball today on Friday, February 5th. Frank Stanfield joined as always by Scott White here to break it down from a fantasy perspective, of course. I have many thoughts on Trevor Bauer, and if you listened to Fantasy Baseball today for the past year, you likely know some of them. But let's focus on fantasy. We'll keep the person, Trevor Bauer, and everything else out of this situation. The money here. This is from Jeff Passan. He tweeted Trevor Bauer's three-year deal with the Dodgers is for $102 million guaranteed, $40 million in 2021, $45 million in 2022. He can opt out after each year, meaning he'll make $40 million if he opts out this year, $85 million if he does so after 2022, and $102 million if he stays all three. Scott, the people want to know, how does this change his fantasy value?
I mean, I can only see it as good news for him, right? I mean, he goes to what was already the World Series favorites. He makes them even bigger favorites and has as good a supporting cast as he could ask for. Not only that, but I feel like his approach to the game meshes well with the Dodgers' approach. They're so good at handling pitching that I think maybe if he were to hit a road bump after his amazing 2020, the Dodgers have a better chance of helping him smooth it out. I don't think they're going to manipulate their usage of him. They're paying him a crap load of money over a short period of time, which would suggest to me that they want to ride him as hard as any other team would. And I don't think Bauer would have signed with them if he didn't have those kinds of assurances. So I already had him as my number 4 starting pitcher after the big three of Bieber, deGrom, and Cole. And I think he's even a firmer number 4 now by signing with the Dodgers. But really, him choosing to sign with the Dodgers as opposed to the Mets gives us a lot more to talk about because of what it means for the rest of the Dodgers rotation. It wreaks havoc on the rest of the Dodgers rotation. And suddenly some guys who looked very interesting there, not so much anymore.
Yes, and of course, we'll get into some of those names, the Dustin Mays and the Tony Gonsolins of the world as well. Scott mentioned he has Trevor Bauer as his SP4 in both formats, right, Scott?
In both, yep. So
I had Trevor Bauer SP6 in points leagues before this move. I had him at SP9 in Roto. I have moved him up to SP6 in Roto as well, so I'm gonna leave him there. I do agree that he will be the unquestioned SP4 off the board in terms of ADP. Personally, I would still rather have Yu Darvish and Aaron Nola, but I wouldn't fault people for wanting to chase the dragon of Trevor Bauer now that he is with the Dodgers. Fantastic stat that we had on today's podcast that came out earlier with Vlad Sedler. He mentioned this, that since 2015, the Dodgers rotation has a 3.36 ERA. The next closest team in the National League is the Cardinals at 3.75. The average in the National League is 4.20. So the Dodgers just know how to get the best out of their starting pitchers, which means that they likely will with Trevor Bauer as well. Scott, excuse me. Earlier, I tweeted out a poll asking if you're on the clock in the second round, who would you rather have? Darvish, Bauer, Giolito, Buehler? And Bauer is actually second in the poll with 28% of the vote. Walker Buehler, 30% of the vote. Everyone knows how we feel about Walker Buehler. We're a little bit more scared about him. But it seems like people are, again, gravitating towards one of those Dodgers pitchers as the 4th starting pitcher off the board. All right, so what does this do for the rest of the rotation, the Dodgers rotation? We know that there is a big 3 up top. There's Bauer, there's Kershaw, there's Walker Buehler. How do you think this shapes the rest of the rotation from David Price, Julio Urias? Do you think we get a 6-man? Who do you think is the odd man out? Because you're right, there was a lot of pitchers that we were excited about here, but now I think we have to pump the brakes a little bit.
It's pandemonium. I don't think we can trust anything for anyone beyond those top 3. And I mean, even the top 3, Bauer, I feel like very secure. Kershaw, of course, has an injury history. I suspect when he's not on the IL, he'll be handled in a very traditional way. Buehler, I mean, we've talked about how we had concerns about how the Dodgers would handle him, given that at the start of the last 2 years, they basically had him skip spring training and build up in season. He only made 1 6-inning regular season start last year, wound up with about 60 total innings between the regular season and postseason. So as careful as they've always been with Buehler, what's it going to, like, what kind of innings increase are they going to ask him to have in 2021? I'm thinking 160 max from Buehler during the regular season, and how that manifests. There's a lot of options now. Maybe they go piggyback at the start of the season with Buehler and one of those other guys, Julio Urias, Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May, one of them piggybacking with Buehler for, I don't know, maybe the first 6 weeks, something like that. Maybe phantom IL stints. The Dodgers always like to work those in as a way of preserving arms. Now they have even more avenues to do it. So you got the three who we expect to take a regular fifth turn, more or less: Bauer, Kershaw, and Buehler. David Price, who didn't pitch at all in 2019, who's 35 years old, who, when we last saw him pitch, his velocity was down, his ERA was up. He's kind of been getting some sleeper buzz, but I don't think we can be so sanguine about him, and it doesn't seem like the Dodgers are either. I think if Price is healthy and is going well enough, he'll probably be a fourth guy who takes a regular fifth turn, because it's not like he would be a fit in the bullpen at all. And so that leaves just one spot, right? That leaves one spot between Urias, Tony Gonsolin, and Dustin May, who had very similar numbers last year, excellent numbers last year. The consensus seems to be that Urias is going to get the most starts out of that group. I don't know that that's a safe assumption, because he's the best bullpen option of the three too. I mean, he was mostly served out of the bullpen in the postseason and saw a big spike in strikeout rate because of that. But I don't think it's going to be a situation where two of those guys are bullpen arms and one's a starter. I don't see it playing out that way at all. I think they'll all be more or less stretched out by throwing 2-3 inning stints in the bullpen, maybe as a piggyback option for a pitcher, maybe as an opener here and there. And then they'll have starts worked in as needed, however the Dodgers see it being most convenient. Nick Pollock of Pitcher List, he kind of laid out what he thought it might look like on Twitter. So one day Kershaw, then Bauer, then Buehler, then Price, then Urias, then Gonsolin or May, then Bauer, then Kershaw, then Buehler, then Price, then Urias, then Bauer, then Gonsolin or May, then like just all over the place what they could choose to do here with those extra arms. And I think that's more or less what it'll be like. I think it'll be a situation where they will all be worth rostering. Urias, Gonsolin, and May, they'll all be worth rostering because the upside is there. The opportunity could present itself at any moment. There's just not going to be a lot of forewarning for when they're going to make a start and if they'll be treated like a normal starter in that start. So it's going to be very frustrating having any of those three, to the point that I'm not sure I want any of those three. And yet I feel like somebody in your league has to have each of them.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And frustrating is the key word there, because it's a great problem to have for the Dodgers. And we know entering 2021, having depth for the rotation is very smart for Major League Baseball teams. So I can't fault the Dodgers for making moves like this and having this type of depth. But it is very frustrating from a fantasy perspective, for sure, because we know the top three, David Price, if you want to include in that mix as well, not that he's on the same talent level, but he's probably going to be given the same opportunities to start consistently. And then we really have just that one spot for three pitchers there with Julio Urias, Dustin May, and Tony Gonsolin. And honestly, Scott, Gonsolin is probably the one that I was looking at most. His ADP right now is 189.3. I think this is probably going to drive his price down a little bit, which means maybe I'm more willing to take a shot on Gonsolin. But remember how they treated Kenta Maeda the last few years that he was there. He would bounce back and forth between the rotation, in the bullpen, and it was frustrating. But when he pitched, no matter where he pitched, he was really good. So I think that we can see something similar from Tony Gonsolin as well. Scott, any chance that we see a six-man rotation here? That would certainly help things.
I don't think like a strict 6-man order, but kind of that order I let off for Nick, that plan Nick Pollock of Pitcher List laid out that I just read off for you, incorporates 6 different pitchers, just not a strict 1 through 6 schedule. Trevor Bauer is going to get every turn. Kershaw, while he's healthy, will get every turn. Buehler presumably will get every turn. I just don't know that he's going to be treated like a full-fledged starter with those turns. But then you're going to see maybe Price spaced out more, maybe Urias spaced out more. Something like that. Like I think there may come a point during the 2021 season when it becomes a more traditional rotation, because maybe Price burns out, maybe he just doesn't have it anymore. Maybe somebody gets hurt. Maybe it's Kershaw. Maybe it's someone we're not even foreseeing. Maybe it's Buehler. Maybe it's Bauer himself. Who knows? And, if that happens, then the Dodgers will have ready-made replacements who are already semi-proven, and we could see somebody like Tony Gonsolin. We could see his value skyrocket. But heading into the season with 7 arms for 5 spots, and 3 of those spots really deserving to be on regular rest, then it's just hard to predict anything for the other 2 spots.
Yeah, a great point there on David Price as well. David Price did not pitch in 2020, so we don't really know what to project. He's someone who has dealt with injuries in the past as well, arm injuries. So these things usually have a way of working themselves out, and there is some risk. Kershaw getting older has the back injury. Buehler had some blisters last year. So look, if Gonsolin is performing well, if Dustin May is performing well, I think these guys will find ways to get opportunities. And something I just thought of while you were talking about it, Scott, was if you take Buehler or even Bauer or Kershaw early in your drafts, why not in one of the last rounds just take a Dustin May or take a Tony Gonsolin, almost as like, again, this is more of a football term, handcuffing your running backs. But with pitchers as talented as this, why not do it? Just take these guys as a backup. If something were to happen to your Kershaw, you have Tony Gonsolin on your bench who's ready to enter the rotation. So something that I would definitely look at doing from a fantasy baseball perspective. Scott, we can basically rule out Trevor Bauer. There was talk about him wanting to pitch every 4th day. There's no chance that's going to happen, right?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty unlikely, at least to start out. If attrition sets in, maybe that becomes a possibility again. But I don't think, like, of all of the Dodgers pitchers, of all 7 options, I think Bauer is going to be the most regular of all. And I would be very surprised if he didn't start every 5th day or at least take every 5th turn. Yep. Factoring in for off days.
Yep, we agree there. Bauer, again, I think he will, in terms of ADP, be the 4th starting pitcher off the board. Scott has him as his SP4 in both head-to-head points. And in Roto, I have Bauer as my SP6 in both formats, right behind Yu Darvish and Aaron Nola. All right, so finally made his decision. Thank you, Trevor Bauer. It's over. Last big name I guess we have now is Marcell Ozuna. So let's see. Maybe he'll land back with your Atlanta Braves, Scott. Cross your fingers there. They certainly can still use him. All right, so for Scott, I'm Frank. Thank you all for listening and watching Fantasy Baseball today. We'll be back again on Monday. Bye-bye.